Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Step into a tale of workplace justice set in the backdrop of pets at home in southern England, where caring for animals brings joy. But dealing with a manager who embodies the spirit of a pesky mosquito tests the patience of even the most dedicated employees. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Don't test me. I have a smartwatch with an alarm function. I once worked at Pets at Home in southern England. I loved working with the animals, and the other worker bees like myself were awesome. One of the managers there, though, was a mosquito in human form. Let's call her Abby. Now, I'd catch a bus to and from work that got me close enough to work that I'd get there with a few minutes to spare. It was either that or I had to get a bus that was an hour earlier, which meant I'd be waiting around for a long time, not getting paid for no reason. One day, the bus was 20 minutes late. It got to the point where I started walking to work, knowing I'd be late, but I phoned ahead to let them know the situation. Abby told me I'd better get there on time. I don't know what she expected me to do, so I ran. Now I have literally zero stamina in me. I'm not obese or anything, but I've never been good at running. If there's a zombie apocalypse, I'm dying first. But I ran all the way to work. My lungs were on fire when I got there. Abby was in the office doing the usual thing she did each day, which was sitting on her lazy butt, browsing YouTube on the computer in the back office, taking occasional breaks to make the people doing actual work feel bad for taking a bathroom break. She gave me hell for being 2 minutes late and actually changed my online rota shift start time to 2 minutes later than it was before. I got an instant update on my phone of this. This bee was being petty enough to dock me 2 minutes pay. I was beyond pissed. Abby had a habit of keeping the workers late for all sorts of unfair and unpaid reasons, so I made it my mission every single day to set an alarm on my smartwatch for the exact minute my shift would end. I would then leave whatever I was doing, whether I was on the tills, building cages, or restocking the shelves, head straight to the office to grab my things and head home. The number of times my manager would object to my leaving on time? That sounds ridiculous. And I would say, in the most sarcastic tone I could, that I was leaving because I'm not getting paid for the minutes I stay overtime. I'm just sticking exactly to the schedule. I kept this up until the day I left. That evening, I was on the closing shift alone with Abby and one other worker bee. This was a rare occasion where Abby was actually helping us do the unpacking before lockup for some reason. My fellow worker knew I was leaving exactly on time, as I'd been doing it for months by then, and lots of others had been following my example. So when the clock struck, we said we were heading out. Again, Abby opposed and insisted we couldn't leave without helping unpack. She probably only really cared this time because she was actually doing work and would be left to do it alone so she could lock up. To which I said something along the lines of, "You literally docked me 2 minutes pay once because I was late once." I stopped caring after that day. This is all on you. We're just sticking to the schedule. Oh man, it was so beautiful and vindicating to say that. And know that she couldn't do a damn thing about it? Screw you, Abby. Some people never learn the golden rule. Treat others the way you'd like to be treated. If you want to be a mean stickler about people's timing, don't be surprised when those people are the exact same with you. And our second story. Just fix it. I was in the military, and until re-enlistment, I was a mechanic. Not a very good one, but I could change parts with the best of them. This happened over 20 years ago. I did clean up the language quite a bit, but I think you'll enjoy it. Our platoon mostly had very good leaders, but we did have one staff sergeant who was the absolute worst. When he arrived, we already had a motor sergeant and a platoon sergeant, both of whom outranked him, so he was assigned the job of managing our vehicle inspections. There were daily, weekly, monthly, etc. inspections that had to be performed. Not a difficult job, but one they assigned him to get him out of the offices since he didn't have anything else to do and nobody really liked him. Every Monday, the vehicle operators from the other platoons would come to the motor pool to do the weekly inspection. The mechanics were assigned a set of vehicles to cover. We would usually work the repairs that could be done immediately, like replacing lights or tightening loose bolts. Then during the week, we would make all of the other repairs. And when we were done, typically Friday, we'd sit down to order all the parts that we didn't have in supply. I was working when one of the operators placed his inspection sheet on my clipboard and left. When I looked at the paperwork, I noticed that his sheet listed a needed repair that was considered a deadline deficiency, a repair that must be performed prior to operating the vehicle per regulations. I informed the motor sergeant, and he said that particular repair wasn't critical and nobody was really certain why it was considered to be a deadline. He also said that he would notify the platoon using it and would ask them to bring it back when it was convenient. Usually, if a deadline vehicle were being operated, we would send the wrecker out to retrieve it. So I do my repairs on Tuesday and Wednesday, and the vehicle still wasn't back. My work was very light that particular week, and I was done with all the repairs by lunch on Wednesday. So I sat down to order my parts. In walks Jerk Sergeant, JS. He instantly begins berating me for being lazy. He then asks if my repairs are made. I tell him that all the ones I could make are, and he asks for the paperwork, which he flips through quickly. He notices the one truck, and the conversation goes like this. JS, is this repair complete? There's nothing written here. Me, no, but JS, no buts. Go out to the lot and fix it. I don't want you doing anything else until it's done. Me, yes, Sergeant. Our motor pool had assigned spots for each vehicle. I looked through the manual for the size bolts for the particular part, grabbed the appropriate wrenches, and headed out. I laid down in the vehicle's assigned spot, raised my wrenches, and pretended to turn them. I lay there for an hour and a half wrenching air. Operators and mechanics noticed me but didn't say anything. Several had heard the conversation and laughed a bit. The motor sergeant was walking the lot doing his thing when he noticed me laying there. The look on his face was priceless. He either thought that I had finally cracked, I was a bit high-strung those days, or that maybe I had heat exhaustion, so he walks over and I can see the gears in his head spinning, and he asks, after a minute of thought, what I was doing. I told him I was making the repair to the vehicle, which only added to the confused look on his face, and then he asks, in a tone of voice reserved for the mentally impaired, if I was aware that the vehicle wasn't there. So I replied, I know this, Sergeant, and you know this, but JS does not want to hear any buts. He only wants me out in this lot until this repair is complete. Edit. Jerk Sergeant did eventually get in trouble, just not for this. He did have several equal opportunity complaints that eventually got him, but the motor sergeant knew me well. We'd been deployed for a year, knew the situation, and he just laughed and told me to go back to work. He also said that I should have informed him of the situation so it could be resolved in a more productive manner. I quoted something military men have been told for a long time: follow the last order given. I have quite a few stories with this guy. Man, that sergeant sounds like a real piece of work. I can't believe he had the nerve to come at you like that, especially when you were just following orders and doing your job. And our last story. HOA told us to stop them if we can. This happened several years ago and is a multi-year long story. I'll keep it as succinct as possible. We installed cameras in front of our home that were looking at our vehicles. Part of the camera angles did overlook parts of two neighbors' properties, one backyard and one side yard. The cameras were battery operated and had a function where you could gray out areas that you didn't want to film. When motion occurred in the grayed out areas, the cameras would not be activated to film. The neighbors' entire properties and several bushes on our property were grayed out. We did this when installing them. One of the neighbors was a friend and had no issues with this whatsoever. We showed her the camera angle, and she said she didn't care whether or not we grayed out that area. We still left it grayed out over battery life concerns. The other neighbor's name was Karen. Not really, but we all know why I chose that name. Karen was on the HOA board, and as you can imagine, we didn't get along with Karen or the HOA board. We told Karen about the camera and showed her the grayed out areas at the same time that we told our friendly neighbor about it. It was simply an FYI conversation. We're not on friendly terms. Not an asking permission conversation. She told us to take the cameras down immediately or we would regret it. About a week after we hung the camera up, we got a notice from our HOA that we were violating the bylaws. The bylaw in question, a nuisance to your neighbor's bylaw. There wasn't a specific bylaw preventing placement of cameras, so this is all they could find to try and punish us. We responded with a letter detailing how we were not violating any bylaws or laws in general and asked them to cease and desist. We all know how these stories go. They didn't cease, and they did not desist. Their first response? The HOA has the right to enforce these bylaws. Try to stop us if you think you can. These types of responses were, unfortunately, quite common from this board. We entered this battle with one goal in mind, to cost them as much money and time as possible. The HOA hired a lawyer specifically to fight us. To my knowledge, this has not happened to any other residents. In the following 4 months, we ended up costing the HOA over $4,000 in lawyer fees fighting this battle. For reference, the entire HOA income was $25,000 a year. When it came time for our official HOA hearing over the matter, we had successfully postponed it, thanks to an attorney friend, 3 separate times. There were over 100 back-and-forth emails with the HOA attorney and ourselves. Each one of those emails was a 15-minute expense for the HOA. And I was happy to follow up a follow-up question with another follow-up question if it meant the HOA attorney was going to keep billing them. Did I say follow-up enough times? We didn't actually want to take this battle to court, so we ended up removing the cameras the day of the hearing to prevent being fined, even if the fine wouldn't hold up in court. The HOA decided in the hearing that we were guilty, surprise, surprise, of violating the bylaws. They couldn't fine us as the bylaws don't allow a fine until after a hearing has been held and the cameras were already removed. In the end, the punishment was a sternly written piece of paper on the attorney's letterhead, delivered via certified mail, that stated that we were not allowed to place a camera on our home that had the potential to invade a neighbor's privacy. Keep in mind, the letter specifically stated the camera could not be placed on our home. We left the cameras off of the home for about 4 months until the annual HOA meeting. You should have seen the look on the HOA board's faces when I asked them to explain the $4,000 line item for attorney fees that simply stated, title searches, attorney fees. The board actually tried to hide the fact that they spent $4,000 trying to fight us over a couple of cameras by putting the fees in as title searches. Needless to say, that meeting did not go well for them. About half of them lost their positions on the board, including Karen. About a week after the annual meeting, we installed new cameras facing the same direction as the prior cameras, only this time we installed a post in the ground and mounted the cameras to that post. The admonishment we received after the hearing specifically stated that we were not allowed to install cameras on our home and said nothing about putting them on a post. They did send a letter to try to tell us to remove the cameras, but a sternly worded response indicating that we were prepared to fight them actually worked this time around. I guess they didn't want to spend another $4,000 fighting us. We didn't receive any follow-up responses, and the cameras on the post are still installed to this day. Over 2 years and running strong. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.